Okay, we're back online and ready to get started with the last hour of the program today. And I'm going to try to get through as many major arcana as I can. I'm supposed to be through with all of them by the end of the day, and there's no way I'm going to get there so far. Okay, so we're ready to move forward here, and let's talk about the Alchemist. The Alchemist is also called Temperance. And echoing the Conqueror, or perfection on the physical plane, 14, or double 7, represents perfection on the astral plane. After the Reaper, the Alchemist shows up with electromagnetic energy, a combination of masculine electric energy and feminine magnetic energy. This electromagnetic energy heals and gives new life. The winged being that is not of this world pours the elixir of life into the golden and silver cups, balancing masculine and feminine forces. This card could mean the reunion of soulmates, a perfect chemistry between male and female, regeneration, and the ongoing movement of life and natural forces. This card symbolizes one of the books in the Alchemy series, Occultism Applied, a broad topic that teaches us how to develop our characters and our lives by utilizing the techniques of alchemy, directed thinking and induced emotions, and antidote and conversion techniques. We're having a convention in 2013 in June of next year. It's called the Alchemist Laboratory, and it's called the Alchemist Transforming Your Everyday Life. So I thought I'd just plug that since we're talking about alchemy right now. Because the Alchemist is ruled by Taurus, the card may be interpreted as an appreciation for beauty and the arts. Taurus is also a sign of patience, process, and slow but predictable progress. There is also the idea that transmutation or transformation is necessary to progress, because without it, stagnation and retrogression may set in. In alchemy, transmutation takes place by addressing discordance in a chart with a dissimilar antidote to neutralize it. For example, a dominant Saturn energy of lack may be neutralized by a Jupiter energy of abundance. This is a form of temperance or balance. A more permanent solution is called conversion, which is surrendering to the energy, but separating its positive and negative aspects and focusing on the positive ones. In the case of Saturn energy, choosing to focus on the positive aspect of organization while disregarding the feelings of lack. How would any of us have progressed if we acted, thought, and dressed like we did in high school? Perish the thought. How many?
We were pretty cute.
We did. We were mistaken. Now.
Didn't talk with reality.
How many transmutations have we made during the course of our lives? A lot, hopefully. The key words for the alchemist are regenerative healing, balance of opposites, perfect chemistry in a relationship, balanced relationship, beauty in the arts, patience, process, and progress through transmutation. And let's have a look at the cards. These cards are actually quite similar. We have the cups, the same. This card shows a balance between land and ocean, or that coordination between logic and emotion, or the mental and emotional activities. We can see that there's a healing going on here because of this nice sun and crown. There's an idea of victory here. We have the crown with the flame on the head showing this is like a genie. It's a green man, must be interested in the environment. Ruled by Taurus. Check out this one. This is from the Hermetic deck, and it's called just simply the Hermetic deck. It's black and white. And she's called the Daughter of Reconcilers. And look at all of these signs. We have Sagittarius, Capricorn, Scorpio. We do see the lightning over here, which would be the masculine energies, and we see the cup with water over here, which would be the feminine. But it looks as if it's going into a cauldron. It's a very different representation of this card. All right. Let's go on to the Black Magician. Now, I've been making reference to this guy all day long, so we finally get to meet him. He's called the Devil in most cards. And here we have a card that depicts the threat of hell. Our cloven devil has the body of a hermaphrodite hog to represent the greed of both sexes. It has a horned head of a crocodile to represent viciousness and stubborn rebellion. It has the wings of a bat to represent that it is a denizen of the dark. Other decks depict him in the Christian imagery of Satan, derived from the pagan god Pan. Pan is a very ancient horned and hoofed woodland deity who was associated with a positive life force in the world, healing, agriculture, animals, fertility, music, dance, medicine, prophecy, and mostly male virility. Because he enjoyed nothing better than seduce females, he was often depicted with an erect penis. As you might imagine, the pagans had such a joyous time celebrating Pan that the patriarchs felt that they had to portray him as a lecherous being, eventually degenerating into pure evil. The Black Magician corresponds to Saturn, and Saturn is the planet that rules the forces of greed. There are three types of magic. White magic benefits others with no personal gain. Gray magic benefits others, including the magician. And black magic is used for personal gain with no regard for others or to even injure others. This card, of course, represents black magic and the safety urges of the soul that often motivate us to get what we want or need at the expense of others. Remember how the security guard was trampled on Black Friday by the greedy Walmart shoppers a couple of years ago? That's a classic example of this urge for I want and I'm going to get no matter what happens. The Black Magician teaches us that the greatest enemy to spiritual growth is selfishness and greed. That selfish, separate self that keeps us apart from the oneness of divinity that we find in the Magus. Where there is separateness and selfishness, there is strife, discord, injustice, taking from others, harm to creatures and the environment. It is interesting to note the similarities between the Black Magician and the Hierophant in the Brotherhood of Light deck. The pillars in the Hierophant represent the pillars of Hermes, the mystery schools, and certainly a spiritual temple. The pillars of the Black Magician are burning in ruins. You can see right behind. See them here. The temple has been destroyed. The perfect man destroyed. The two adoring genies of the Hierophant appear in the Black Magician as enslaved servants to evil and greed, taking on the heads of goats. The Hierophant makes the sign of blessing, while the genies of the Black Magician make the sign of materialism and black magic, which is this sign. It's a sign of the inverted triangle. If spirit is in there, it cannot move anywhere. It's trapped inside. Yes, Janet?
I believe the figures on the bottom are Capricorn and Aries, because one's a goat and one's a ram. See the rams?
Yes, I do. That's a very good observation. So we have, let's see.
Both selfish signs, by the way.
Both, yeah. So this is, I'm thinking that's the ram, And this is the goat?
Yeah.
I think that.
What do you
I
think?
think what that's supposed to be symbolizing is that as a herd animal, as an animal
Oh,
that follow, that they
That
tend
follows.
to follow rather
Those are
than.
told.
Oh, rather than
That's
take the high.
another.
Oh, sheep
another
and
way to look
authority.
at
Okay.
it. Yeah. Right.
Unbelievable.
The Egyptian tradition teaches us that when one works with evil forces, one becomes enslaved by them. Working magic of any kind is a dangerous business because in ignorance or neglect, and even if our intentions are pure, magic becomes an opportunity for dark forces to invade. Remember the book An Interview with a Vampire by Anne Rice? Remember that book? Did anybody read that book? Awesome. She wrote something like, and this just gave me the chills when I read it, vampires can only enter your home if you invite them in. And that's really the way life is, isn't it? That we invite sometimes negative energies into our lives. Arcanum 15, the Black Magician, is the first card of the third line of the Major Arcanum. Even though it is commonly taught that the third line of the Major Arcana represents the spiritual plane, that never made sense to me.
Allyn, can I interject one thing?
Sure.
There's also the rule of working with guides and ascended masters. They can only enter our lives
If we invite them in. Great point, Laura. I love that. So let me back up here. Even though it is commonly taught that the third line of the Major Arcana represents the spiritual plane, that has never made sense to me. As pointed out earlier, I believe Arcanum 1 through 9 symbolize the physical as expressed in the maximum experience of the sage. Arcanum 10 takes us immediately into the astral, where our existence here on earth manifests first. I've never heard or read this perspective before, and until I do, I believe it is my very own interpretation. And you may accept it or not. So according to my theory, we are still in the astral in Arcanum 15. My point being that just as there are racketeers and gangsters in the physical, there are racketeers and gangsters in the astral. Our vibratory rates attract us to similar vibratory rates in the astral, and certainly the reverse is true. Just as there are forces for good in the astral, there are also forces for evil, which can influence our lives here on earth. We can attract these evil forces by acting evil ourselves. I'm happy to report that there is a bright side to this card. Saturn also rules system, form, and organizational skills, all of which can be put to good use in our daily lives. It's a great day when your paperwork is in order, your closets and drawers are organized, and you can find the car keys. The key words and phrases that can be used in the spread, should the Black Magician turn up, are safety urges of the soul, being in for it, or asking for it, black magic, cruelty, deceit, gluttony, selfishness, greed, egotism, lust, materialism, temptation, organization, form, and system.
Hey, Allie,
Yes.
I just had a thought. If this is the first card in the spiritual realm, maybe that's the first thing that we have to, our selfish desires, is the first thing that stops us from going to the
That's a
spiritual.
very good
That's
point.
a good
That's a very good point, Yvette.
We
Yeah.
have to get through that first.
This is what I love about Tarot so much, is that people can, we can sit here
It's
and
so
talk all
stimulating.
day. It's so stimulating. We all get these little ideas. And you know what's really wonderful is if you have a tarot buddy, you find somebody to read cards with, and you can sit and chat about all of these insights that you have and share them with each other. I had a tarot buddy when I was learning, and it was really helpful. It was really helpful to bounce off all these ideas.
One of the first things when I moved out to Los Angeles back in 1976 and was in the community of people who had been studying this material,
Mm-hmm.
I think it was Jesse Montoya who said, Saturn is the most spiritual planet. And
What? You were like, what?
And I've thought about that, and I have thought about that. And I asked him what he meant. He said, well, think about it.
Uh-huh.
And I think what he was saying is that when you turn that energy outside, you're no longer expressing it as selfishness, then you're aligning yourself with a higher plan. And you can apply those skills that you've learned in trying to satisfy all your selfish urges and needs.
Right.
It gets turned, and it can then express more spiritually.
That's
I
it.
always thought that was fascinating, and I've thought about it, and I've
Right.
thought about it.
Right. And
I
isn't
still
that
don't know what it means.
Isn't that true though of every card sort of has this flip side that you can always, any opposite is like that. Like you can learn to appreciate the light by incorporating the dark.
Right.
You know, the only way you can understand light is by putting darkness around it. And so that whole idea of opposites is where we get that one can't exist without the other type thing. Yes.
But also for a spiritual path, you really do need discipline.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so Saturn is what takes you through it. It's what keeps you on path, and it's what takes you through it.
Absolutely.
Without that, you just never get there, you know? You can't just do it sporadically or whatever. You have to have some sense of routine and
Discipline.
And discipline.
Yeah.
And
Also
system.
discipline.
And system.
system. And even tarot is a system,
Absolutely.
you know, and it can actually be used as a discipline as well if you're, you know, if you're using it on a routine basis for insights.
Absolutely.
What's with the serpent
But not
coming out of his
becoming
navel?
But not becoming addicted, right. I'm sorry, Mercury?
What's with the serpent coming out of his navel?
Well, you know, usually the serpent comes out of the head when Egyptians are trying to show enlightenment. And here the circle's coming out of his navel, which would probably say, just tells me that
Creative energy
it's creative
directed to a lower purpose.
to a lower purpose. It's coming out of the gut or the gluttony.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, right. You notice he also has an erection. It's very, very difficult to see, but he does. And
That's okay.
that's
not necessary.
Oh, you're not into that?
Point that out again, Ellie.
It's right there. Where you wouldn't think it would be.
It's hard to see on there.
Oh, come on, guys. I'm having a little fun. Look at this one. No. Now, what I do want to point out, though, is I want you to notice this scepter here. This is what I was talking about, where we have that inverted triangle that's pointing to materialism.
Right.
And here's spirit, but it can't go anywhere. It just rocks around in there.
Yeah,
It's stuck in there.
Another really good thing, I had 2 points. One was we were talking about using this card as a doorway to spiritual growth, and it made me flash on the fact that in the 12 steps, the first 3 steps are involved with admitting that you are not the end all of the universe, that you need to connect with a higher power.
Yes.
And then the 4th step is taking a fearless and searching moral inventory. Being very honest in your look at yourself and see your shortcomings and your unskillful behavior and all that, which is so essential to get over our hubris and our, you know, self-aggrandizement and deludedness about self.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
And the other point I wanted to make, it shows more on the card on the left, but lots of depictions of the devil in various decks show the partnered pair at the bottom in chains with the chains loose enough around their necks for
that
them
they
to
can
lift
take
them
it
up
off.
if they get conscious.
That's
of
exactly
the fact
right.
that they can liberate themselves.
Exactly. They always have a chance to free themselves. It's a choice, in other words. Right. To
But
keep
it's
the
also
chain on.
a dawning of
Yes.
awareness, an elevation of
Right.
realization.
Right.
Aha.
Aha
I can
moment.
do this,
Absolutely.
especially with the help of higher power.
I also saw, and where you were talking a moment ago about the inventory that one takes of themselves before they can really, move on. I've seen in one deck, and I can't remember which one it is, but the devil shows the chained people, but they have mirrors next to them. And they're looking in the mirrors, and they're frightful at what they see. So that would be that idea of self, taking an inventory of your true self, that part that's inside of us that we don't like to show.
When you examine the way that step is worded, taking a searching and fearless and searching moral inventory, it doesn't mean you're just going to look at your shortcomings, at your weaknesses.
Right.
You also inventory your moral strengths and your character development,
Exactly.
And in fact, sometimes that's the harder thing for some people to do.
Keep it in balance.
Is to actually acknowledge that they really do have very good qualities, they're very good at this or that or something else, and it's like, that would be bragging or whatever. They can't go there.
But those very strengths that we can identify, if we can make our visualizations and affirmations out of those that we already see are, well developed in ourselves, and we can use them to overcome our weaknesses, then we're really onto something.
Yeah, really.
Well, I should say, and with that, let's get on to something.
We missed it.
I know, I've got back to it. Mm-hmm. Okay, this card is called the Lightning, and in most other decks it's called the Tower, and it is Arcanum 16. And this card corresponds to Mars, which rules the aggressive urges of the soul, either constructively or destructively. To elaborate on the constructive side of this card, Mars rules the musculature of the body, without which we would have no strength. Without strength, we couldn't get out of bed in the morning, much less mow the lawn, pound a nail, or build bridges and cities. Nor could we defend our families or ourselves. Mars is also a planet of passion and motivation, and life is so much easier to manage with these two wonderful sources of energy. The passion is what keeps me standing here for all these hours. With that being said, however, the lightning is generally read as an unfortunate event, like accident, surgery, brute force, or catastrophe. And by the way, the word catastrophe, I think, means something like ill-fated star. So here we see a pyramid being decapitated suddenly and unexpectedly by a bolt of lightning. The pyramid was once considered, and perhaps even today considered, the peak of human evolution, not to mention a marvel of construction. So there is a feeling in this card that a false sense of security is in play, and a sense of overconfidence or arrogance. In the weight deck, the tower also symbolizes man's hubris. Two other towers that come to mind are the ivory tower, which has its origins and stories throughout the Bible, and today is an expression that generally means a disconnect from daily realities or a lofty place in society. The other tower that comes to mind is the Tower of Babel, a story that not only appears in the Bible, but also appears in the Quran and legends in Central America and Africa, to name a few. A common theme in all of these accounts is the Lord's contempt for human pride. Whether or not the Lord or God or the Absolute really has contempt for hubris is debatable. But certainly the lightning could be a metaphor for those horrible moments of being put in one's place, getting burned, or taken down by a scandal. Most of these things occur because of our own actions or inactions. As this card represents a natural law that is blind to stature, a nobleman and a common man are seen to fall. In every man's life, there is unexpected peril. No one can escape the forces of natural law, whether it be meted out by nature or meted out by human catalyst. But do these men fall to their peril? Probably not. They probably hit the ground hard, dust themselves off, and ask themselves Why did that happen to me? If they can learn from that unfortunate event, they will be better off for it. All unfortunate events are opportunities to grow in character. Plutarch was a Greek historian and essayist. He saw lightning as a heavenly phallus, fertilizing the primal waters and thereby creating all life. To quote Sally Nichols from Young and Thoreau, quote, "The idea of lightning as a life-giving power is echoed in this tarot picture, where the concrete tower, like the hard outer shell of a nut, is being cracked open to release two living inner kernels, seen falling toward the soil. There they will probably take root and begin new life." Ain't that the truth?
Is that how you spell lightning?
Did I spell it wrong?
G-H.
I think it's right.
I think
I think
there's
that's-
no E before the N.
Lightning?
I think that that's how Zane, I think he's.
Oh, is that how Zane
I think
spelled-
Zane does spell
spell
it that way.
It's
Well-
got a nice double entendre to it
Yeah.
that way.
Lightning. This card warns of false security and hubris. And so what if we fall down and go boom? To be humiliated, which is most often considered a bad thing, can be a good thing for us, because it's only when we're not full of ourselves that we can actually see and admit to our shortcomings. Other interpretations of this card are physical destruction, surgical operations, brute force, ammunition, goals based on purely physical and material success, frustrated ambition, projects sterile or failed, accident or catastrophe, dislodged or put down, feelings of urgency, learning how to lead a fully constructive life. Boy, that's taken a positive attitude on the card. Passion, energy, strength, motivation, construction, and I've even seen this card come up to represent divorce. I've even seen it that way.
Well, was it a particularly destructive divorce?
No,
Didn't
not
you mean
particularly.
character?
No, it was just like, but you know, every divorce is disastrous.
Yeah.
You know, matter, you know, well, some divorces are fairly
It's the
amicable,
going
and
through.
some are more disastrous than others. But all divorces really do split asunder.
Yeah.
You know what was formerly a positive thing.
Well, sometimes it was pretty rotten and it needed to be split asunder.
Yeah, well, so do the institutionalized status quo structures sometimes need the lightning bolt to shake things up so that change can ever happen.
Sure.
The powers that be are those guys being thrown out of the tower, you know, so that some transformation something can move here. The
Absolutely.
constructive powers of Mars can start to be active.
You know, it's like, I think it was the tsunami that I heard this about. That they have now, what they have rebuilt in the wake of that tsunami is far superior to what they had before that, and they're able to grow and thrive in a better way.
Absolutely.
And, so
Right.
that would be an example.
Well,
That's
yeah.
a great example. And that's what Sally Nichols is talking about, these kernels that fall to the ground and somehow plant themselves and something new comes, you know, springs forth from that action.
Katrina is having.
Absolutely.
And I mean, I don't know full scale if that's the truth about it.
Right.
I know in some ways.
Well,
Right.
also, the tsunami, it's not just the Japanese that are making changes to learn from that experience. All around the world, there's been a revaluing.
Except for the United States.
Yeah, right.
Well, we'll catch on. The interpretation of the more serious cards in the deck can be very tricky. Of course, the more information you have, the easier it is to make a judgment about the meaning of the card. If the reading is about a relationship, you can bet that the relationship is not in the best interest of the querent, or there's trouble in paradise. If the reading is about business, it could mean construction at the workplace, projects pending or failed, motivation needed or present, or stress to meet deadlines. In a what surrounds me right now reading, this question is very common, especially when reading in public. And I see this card in the past. I may offer that the querent may have undergone a physical stress, like an accident or surgery. If it comes up in the future, I would not predict surgery, as I would not predict death. But I would stress the positive aspects of the card, learning to live a more constructive life, slowing down to avoid accident or illness, and taking care of themselves by getting plenty of rest, eating properly, and getting regular checkups.
And doing a purification. The idea of purification can fit right into that, throwing the old demons out of the status quo structure.
Yeah, right. And you know, it's funny because when I offer this this advice to people, 9 times out of 10 they're saying, yeah, you know, I've been working a little too hard and I haven't really been taking care of myself and this and that. And they know that things aren't right, you know. So let's have a look at these cards. We have here our decapitated pyramid. And actually you can, you know, every single thing in these cards means something. Even these little steps here, there's 7 of them, I think, means something in these cards. And I can't remember them all. This doorway, I believe in the symbolism of this card, that doorways in pyramids represent a solution of some kind or an improvement of some kind. We see the pharaoh and the common man being ousted out of the pyramid. Here we see the crowned king, and we see the commoner over here. I always thought that was a blonde falling out of there for a long time.
The blonde and the brunette.
The blonde and the brunette, right. And, I mean, doesn't it look like it?
It does, yeah.
And then this this deck is the Knights of the Round Table deck, or some such thing, and it's based on, you know, Percival and Guinevere and Sir Lancelot, and this is called Vortigern's Fortress, or Vortigern's Fortress, I guess.
I love the dragon.
And it's just gorgeous, and we have this big abyss as if there's been like a big earthquake or something, and we have the dragons surrounding the tower and the lightning striking. It's quite a beautiful deck of cards, actually.
Is that bar across the doorway to the pyramid prohibitive? Does that mean that you can't enter the doorway?
No. Bars across the top of doorways in Egypt are called lintels.
Yeah, but I mean the diagonal
The one diagonal
like
across the
shiny
front of the door.
Oh, the shiny one? I don't think so. Do you have any
And I
knowledge
think it
about that?
represents levels.
Levels, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
levels
okay.
of
Okay.
consciousness.
Lightning spell drum?
I'm sorry? Oh,
Lightning?
yeah, you're the second one to point that out today. I'm going to have to look that up in the
I
dictionary.
think I've been through that before, and I think he spells it this way.
Oh,
Okay. It just might be an antiquated
It's
version
probably
of
an
spelling.
antiquated.
Right.
It is, because lightning is actually spelled after the T is an N. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but it's okay.
Okay.
Unless my spell checker catches it, I never know.
Well, you should try and spell check CC's name.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to go there, Janet.
More punctuation.
Yeah, grammar checks will hang you up forever.
Okay, Arcanum 17 here, the star. I think this is everybody's favorite card. I love this card myself. The destruction of the lightning is followed by the healing experience of the star. And the healing comes from insight, particularly insight from within, and not, for example, insight provided by a counselor or some other outside source. The star teaches us that experiences, both good and evil, are necessary for character development and soul progression. According to the Brotherhood of Light tradition, if the soul assimilates its experiences, it is assured of its immortality. Even in astrology, when we see a chart that is not harmonious, we say that person has a great opportunity to grow in character. We do.
I know.
And we're trying to be positive. But we mean it, because if you have a harmonious chart, then you're just going to cruise along and not really learn from experiences in life.
And there's no challenges and therefore no satisfaction.
There's no satisfaction. This arcanum represents that moment after the smoke clears, when we might wonder, why did that happen to me? After a good deal of soul searching, one might get some answers to that question. The star card represents that moment of epiphany that only comes through meditation, prayer, and a sincere desire to know the truth. But where is the truth? Because this card is ruled by Gemini, its message is that the truth is not found in only one place. Because the Gemini twins symbolize duality, this card tells us that part of the truth will be found in the emotions as represented by the water, and part of the truth will be found in the intellect as represented by the land. The star maiden pours the elixirs of life into both the water and the land, because each needs to be nourished. The maiden's nudity suggests the bare, naked truth, indicating that the first step to clarity might be to strip oneself of opinions, preconceptions, and prejudices, examining each to verify if indeed they are true. Often preconceptions are at the root of a problem. The nudity also suggests truth in both reality and appearances. And we remember from our childhood that appearances are sometimes deceptive. Goodness knows we all look quite differently when we are naked than when we have our clothes on. Well, it's true. The butterfly is traditionally a symbol of transmutation or transformation, which occurs when the truth is finally revealed. As an aside, just as we swear on the Bible in courts of law, the Romans often swore by Gemini in oaths of truth. Today, in modern English, the oath is still sometimes heard as by Gemini.
by Gemini.
Yeah. The key words and phrases for this card are truth, hope, faith, healing, reason in combination with intuition, insight from within, truth in many places, or at least in two places, truth in both reality and appearances, both emotions and intellect needed, and transformation. In the Orion Mystery by Robert Bouval and Adrian Gilbert, the stellar religion of the ancient Egyptians is explored in depth. In that book, I found an interesting passage that reminded me of this image. There is a book of two ways that insists that the road to Rostau, which is what the ancient Egyptians called the Great Pyramid and the spiritual center, they called it Rostau. The roads to Rostau, though represented in the sky, are actually on water and on land. The idea of duality is again symbolized in the brilliant star of 8 rays containing 2 trine, 1 black and 1 white, representing all opposites and how it is necessary to experience a balance between them to evolve. The larger star, according to Doris Chase Doan in Secret Symbolism of the Tarot, symbolizes the book of the Apocalypse sealed with the 7 seals and the so-called basic 7 planets. It is said that the image of the star is engraved on the western wall of the Temple of Isis on the Egyptian island of Philae. If I'd known that in 2005, when I visited Egypt, I would have tried to see it. But I understand that this is part of the Temple of Isis that is not open to the public. Anyway, this would make sense because Isis was well known to be a protector of mariners and ships. And that would be the perfect place for her to be overlooking the ships on the Nile. The star of Isis, Sirius, was the Stella Maris, or Star of the Sea. And it was also known as the Star of the East and the Star of the Orient. In The Master Game by Graham Hancock and Robert Bouval, it is stated that Court de Gibelin, and I'm sure I'm not pronouncing that correctly, Freemason and supposed inventor of the modern tarot, stated that the star in the star card is Sirius, the star of Isis.
All of those cards are beautiful, beautiful for the star.
I know, aren't they just gorgeous? I just love them all. I love this one. She's just gorgeous. And I picked her out just because I thought she was beautiful. But I love all three of them. And like I said, in most cases, this is everybody's favorite card.
Right. So which deck is the one to the left?
I don't know, Vidya. I wish I did, but I went on to Google and I was looking for star cards, and I went, ooh, that's pretty, and I just picked it. So I don't know the name of it. I wish I did, because if I did, I'd buy the deck.
Google star cards.
Just Google star cards, and you might be able to find her. Yes.
And the glyphs under her wings, is that Aquarius and Capricorn, or are those Hebrew letters?
They look like Hebrew letters.
It's like a Hebrew letter.
Yes, I think so.
Like Aquarius.
And you know what? Well, yeah, it does kind of look like it. I couldn't make out what that was, but now that you mention it, it does look like Aquarius.
Put your beam on it so I can see what you're talking about.
Right here. Does that look like Aquarius? And this looks like, that definitely looks like Hebrew to me.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. I love this next card. Arcanum 18, the moon, and it is called the moon in most decks. Like Veiled Isis, this is a difficult card for most readers because it could represent so many things. And the first thing it represents is a mystery. So we're already starting out with a mystery. The second and third most common interpretations are a period of depression or moodiness or insanity, which is connected to someone the querent is closely associated with, or which is connected only with the querent. And in most cases, it's the querent. So if you're at a fair and this card comes up, you don't know whether the person across from you is depressed or just simply out of their mind. No, there's a mystery involved. The symbolism of this card is rich and symbolizes many scenarios. It is dark, not because it is nighttime, but because the moon has eclipsed the sun. So what is happening is not taking place in the light of day, but is hidden or covered up. That's the mysterious part. The moon represents our moods, and in this case, the moon represents depression, lowered vibratory levels, or a woman's moon time, a volatile time indeed. Full moons have long been associated with insanity. We get our English words lunacy and lunatic from the Latin luna, meaning moon. It has also been noticed that emergency rooms are busier than usual during full moons, and criminal activity increases. We know, too, that women who commit violent crimes are more likely to do so during their moon time, particularly if she's in the kitchen with a lot of sharp knives. I used to
stay out of the kitchen.
Out. Out. I used to work for a plastic surgeon that actually refused to do head and neck surgery during a full moon, because this part of the body bleeds more readily than other parts to begin with. But during full moon, the bleeding would increase to the point of getting in the way of his ability to operate with an artistic hand. So he would literally look at the calendar every month for full moons and not do head and neck surgery around that time.
That's the best time to do your planting, though.
Well, could be.
Depends on what you're planting.
Yeah.
Oh.
But then again, maybe he just was a werewolf.
And speaking of werewolves, full moons have long been associated with the legend of the werewolf, also known as lycanthrope from the Greek. Legends of shapeshifters during a full moon, like the werewolf, are common around the world, particularly in Native American traditions. The legend is perhaps an analogy for what people have known since the dawn of man, that people can and do change or shapeshift for the worse during a full moon. There are usually two dogs. Hi, Christopher. There are usually two dogs depicted on this arcanum. In some decks, one looks like a friendly little pup, and the other looks like a jackal. And this is certainly so here, when we have a friendly-looking pup, and this guy does not look that friendly. This description is illustrated in the weight deck, as I just pointed out. In the Egyptian deck, one dog is black, representing deceit, hostility, and possible ambushes, and the other is white, representing a friendly soul who is offering flatteries, but probably not offering the truth. Man and dog have shared relationships for 40,000 years, and it is claimed by some that humans could not have evolved without the many services offered to us by dogs in exchange for the crap. Did I say that? Excuse me.
It's her
For this-
lunacy.
Right. For the scraps of food we leave behind. Oh, stop it, Janet. We have come to recognize dogs as our protectors and defenders, as herders, hunters, police dogs, guide dogs, medical aids, and just plain good company. But then, sometimes they can bite. The dogs in this card represent our family, friends, or close associates. That too can bite. Or maybe a better choice of words is backbite. When we least expect it, or when we're not aware of it. There are two pyramids, a black one with no door, symbolizing an ignorant and uninspired life, and a white pyramid with a door, symbolizing a learned, enlightened life through science and spiritual wisdom. The door of the white pyramid, of course, represents a solution or a way to safety. The scorpion, sometimes depicted as a crawdad, which is also a creature of the night, represents treachery and knowledge used to dominate and control. The moon is ruled by the astrological sign of Cancer, the sign most susceptible to influences in the environment, both seen and unseen, and the sign most closely associated with domestic issues and the occult science of mediumship. Mediums often work in a darkened room and allow themselves to be taken over by another entity. This is a dangerous practice at best, but often, too, it is simply a hoax or yet another form of deception. I have a very dear friend for whom I've read tarot many times over the years, and there was a period in her life when this card came up over and over again. And she is a Cancer, by the way. And my friend during this time was diagnosed as clinically depressed. Her lament was that she felt lost, out of touch with herself, her family, and her life in general. She was nearly suicidal. When the mystics talk about going into the darkness, they are sometimes talking about literal darkness and sometimes talking about a metaphorical darkness. It is true that immersion into total darkness, like a cave, for example, is likely to produce hallucinations only after a matter of minutes. Oracles, those people through whom a deity speaks, or a shrine in which a deity reveals hidden knowledge, were widespread all over the ancient world. These oracles were always underground in tunnels and caves. There were some priests who never saw the light of day. An Egyptian temple is rarely without an underground passage that leads to a secret chapel. In the previous arcanum, the star, we spoke about finding truth, both from an intellectual and emotional standpoint. But in order to test our truths, we must experience them. It is one thing to know that fire is hot, but quite another thing to put our hand in the fire to know exactly how hot it is. Metaphorically speaking, when we experience a dark night of the soul, we enter a dark and frightening place, fraught with danger and pitfalls. We are, in effect, undergoing an initiation of a sort that tests our mettle and tests our truths. Often, after we come out the other side of it, we have a clearer understanding of ourselves. Certainly my friend did. During her bout with depression, which lasted for almost 2 years, she sought help from a support group and confronted her personal demons and those family members and friends with whom she had unfinished business. It was not easy, and it took a great deal of soul search and courage to do it. I've known her since she was 10 years old, and I've never seen her happier or more well-adjusted than she is now. So, if the card represents lunacy, however, our hero may never come out the other side and may remain trapped in the hellish environment of his own mind. Interestingly, in the Egyptian Book of the Dead, with commentary by E.A. Wallace Budge, I've come across several passages describing the circumstances of the duat, or the afterlife, as it was conceived immediately following death. Abydos was the seat of Osiris worship in Upper Egypt, and to this day the god Osiris is believed to be buried there. Near Abydos there are 2 mountains, and it was believed that in order to enter the duat after death, the soul had to pass through the valley between the mountains to the great oasis, where some historians have placed the Elysian fields. But it wasn't easy to reach the great oasis because it existed in the most remote corner of the dead land. A soul might easily lose his way or be accosted or driven back by hostile entities who hid in the shadows. Here I am reminded of the passage, "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil." Hence, the only safe way to passage was through the aids of guides, or the openers of the ways, as they say in ancient Egyptian. Interestingly, Anubis, who is often depicted as a dog, seems to represent, as a nature god, either the darkest part of the night or the earliest dawn. In the legend of Osiris and Isis, Anubis played an important part in finding the dead body of Osiris, and one tradition asserts that Isis only found it with the help of dogs. Another god called Apuat, or opener of the way, was depicted in the form of a wolf. But Anubis and Apuat are often confused in funerary scenes. According to a legend as described by Professor Mastero, the god Anubis led the souls of the dead to the Elysian fields in the great oasis. 1 dog and 1 wolf, 1 tame dog and 1 wild dog, 1 white dog and 1 black dog. Perhaps the dogs in this arcanum not only represent our enemies, but also our guides. After all, we must forgive our enemies if we are to assimilate the experience they brought to us. In summary, there are lots of key words and phrases for this card. Some of them are lunacy, depression, deception, false friends or secret enemies, danger in the home, warning that non-physical entities are not to be trusted, family or friends are not to be trusted, political infighting, backbiting, flattery, the confrontation of shadow material, which must be recognized and assimilated in order to progress. And finally, moving forward is the only option. So, let's look at these cards. So we already sort of went through this. Instead of 2 pyramids, we have 2 pylons here. And we have the puppy dog and the wolf. We have the eclipse going on. And we have a crawdad looking thing here coming out of the water. Over here we have pyramids instead, but they could also look like mountains, couldn't they? They could be like a valley walking through. Here we have a scorpion rather than a crawdad. And over here we have these 2 dogs coming out of the water, 1 black and 1 white. And we have a mermaid coming up, and this idea of being in the darkness. And this is an interesting card. I just picked it because I thought it was beautiful. But it does imply mystery, doesn't it? We have the ocean where we don't know everything, and out of the ocean anything could come up and bite you, right, and find you in the water. And she, of course, is not a real image. She's not a real being. At least we don't think so. Mermaids, we don't generally see them when we go fishing. So she could be like a fantasy, or that idea of lunacy. And the dogs perhaps guiding her way through the ocean, a deep and disparaging place to be out in the middle of.
That tail, does that go with the mermaid or that white
I
dog?
think this goes with the mermaid, yeah.
No,
It's
I'm
kind
talking about the tail in the back.
The white dog,
It
the white
looks like a
tail.
white dog's tail.
That's a
It
white
looks
dog
like-
tail.
Oh,
Mhm.
It looks like a sea dog.
It's a sea dog.
Yeah.
So any questions or comments about this card? It's 5 to 4, so I think this is a great time for us to stop. And
Okay, one question.
yeah.
The only, quote, positive, helpful thing I see about this interpretation is the possibility of aid through guides and counselors. How do we get to that when we're surrounded with all the nefarious other interpretive associations with this card?
Well, I would really like to give you some kind of clear-cut answer on that, but this is really a very difficult card. I mean, it's really mysterious. Do you have any ideas, or Christopher?
Confronting your shadow.
Confronting your
Yeah.
shadow,
I think
yeah.
it's-
Yeah, I
just-
think it
And
is.
asking for spirit guides
You-
to help
you have to
you
become
in
clear.
a good way.
You've got to open your space of clarity up by
Mhm.
being willing to.
And keep
confront
moving
yourself.
forward. But there's also that possibility that you're stuck, too, in deep
Yeah, that's
depression.
right. You can't
Or
do
you're
it.
stuck
Yeah.
in mental disorder, too.
In some training about shamanic journeying, I was introduced to the idea of when we are doing our inner visualization and we ask to be introduced to animal helping spirits,
Uh-huh.
that we actually test them by having them show us 4 different gestures or saying something, 4 proofs that they are indeed legitimate helping spirits.
Wow.
And I mean, I've led other people through those journeys too, and it's amazing how creative the animals can be
Wow.
in convincing us that, yes, indeed, you can trust me. I'm really a helping spirit.
Oh, my. That's very
I think that
interesting.
could be used in lots of different ways in our
Sure.
inner work.
Yeah. That's very
And it's
interesting.
also a good use of the moon because we're going into the imaginal, we're going into the undersea, non-rational world in order to meet the animals that can potentially be our friends.
Well, I have to say this, that my dog that has long since passed was probably my greatest spiritual advisor. And I learned more from her, my little dog, than anybody, probably. So, with that being said, let us be prepared. Oh, yes, Margie, I'm sorry.
That path in the middle of the moon card, in the center one, did you mention that what the path represents?
The path.
That path?
The path, that is the way forward. And one of the, yeah, that's the way forward. And one of the interpretations of this card is the only way to move is forward. To just keep going and plodding through it. It's like a test. It's like, what do they call those gauntlets? It's like a gauntlet that you move through. And if you get out the other side, chances are you'll be a better person for it. Any other questions? Oh, well, I came up with those words from the Brotherhood of Light books and from, doing my own research and trying to make connections. We start first with keywords, and then we build on those keywords as we learn more about the cards. So you'll find a lot of these words in the books that I pointed out to you this morning. And I've also done a lot of outside reading, which helps me, come up with my own ideas around these. And I think everyone's welcome to do that, All right, well, I hope to see you all back at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning sharp. Thank you.